Hello, welcome to eTeachers 365, where education and culture meet. My name is Elaine Johnson, wife, mother, educator, master storyteller. So today I want to talk to you about Women's History Month. I also would like to say thank you very much for those of you who appreciated and commented and shared on the do's and don'ts of Black History Month, along with the video about Africa. I really appreciate the feedback, the support, and the comments. Please also remember to check down in the description below. I also provide links, resources to articles, and other information that might be helpful on your journey, either as an educator or as a parent. So let's get started, as my daughter would say. Women's History Month. One of the things that I would like to focus on, yes, I am a third grade teacher, so I teach all subjects: English, language arts, math, science, and social studies. This channel specifically focuses on education and culture, and me as an African American woman, how do I bring my culture and things like that into the classroom? And so although we teach geometry and although I do other things, and also for Women's History Month, they will learn about Sally Ride, and they will learn about Sonia Sotomayor, and they will learn about other people. The focus for this particular video is how I will highlight women of color, and how I will and would teach about different women as it relates to the African American experience, because we know there is an intersectionality between racism and sexism. So let's talk about a couple of books that I would share with my students. This story is called The Girl with a Mind for Math, the story of Ray Montague. If you do not have it, you should definitely purchase it, because it tells an amazing story about an African-American woman, but it starts with her as a little girl. And it talks about how she wanted to be an engineer, and because of racism, she was not allowed to attend certain schools. And even after she graduated from school in her bachelor's of science degree, she was hired in the Navy office as a secretary. And so this story tells how she went from the secretary to actually the first woman to design a computer-generated program to build and create a Navy ship. Her story is amazing. I shared it with my daughter's first grade class, and I plan to share it with my third graders as well. It just really talks about how, with growth mindset, she was able to achieve her goals and not focus on the fact that she had three things against her: being a woman, being African American, and just dealing with segregation. But regardless of all of those things, she was able to overcome and be a successful woman. So Ray Montague, a wonderful story. I think it's important that we teach our children people who maybe you have never heard of before. Claudette Colvin, the story of the woman who was the first woman to actually refuse to give up her seat on the bus. Amazing story to talk about what has happened in our American history. Also, another book that I would share with my class, elementary class, A Ride to Remember, a civil rights story. This is also an amazing story because it talks about a little girl who was not able to, get on a carousel at the amusement park. And so one of the things that I think people get stuck with when they're teaching about certain topics is, how can I teach my children about the truths of what happened in America? Picture books are amazing. This story was not so long ago. The lady who experienced this, we're friends on Facebook. These stories that happen to children, they are now adults. And so we do them a disservice when we don't say their name and when we don't speak and share their stories. And the children, my third graders, they get sad when I tell them about the experiences of African American people or Native American people, or, the way women were treated. They get angry. And you know what? That's okay. I want them, when I am teaching them, to feel some type of emotion. Now, do I want them to stay sad and stay angry? Absolutely not. But when they feel emotions and when they think about and empathize with what these women experience, and of course these are the boys or the girls in my classroom, this is what hopefully helps them to remember and then to do something differently. They feel upset when they learn about Katherine Johnson's experience and how her story wasn't told until someone wrote about her story. And I told them, I never even heard about Katherine Johnson as a child. I never knew about her. And so, yes, they get a little bit upset. Doesn't matter. We want to teach our children the truth. And so the stories that I highlight are of African American women who are game changers, African American women who you may have heard their husband's story. Again, example here in Coretta Scott King. This is a beautiful children's book. The poetry is by Ntozake Shange and the pictures are by Kadir Nelson. Now, bringing books like this of beautiful images of women who they can see and understand and hear about their stories helps our children become the type of children who reflect, who analyze, who don't just hear information and then don't do anything with it. We want to make sure that our children hear multiple stories and multiple genres, can learn from them, dissect them, analyze them, and then hopefully grow from them. So the story of Coretta Scott King, I tell my students all the time, I know you know about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., but his wife was amazing. And she lived a long life and was able to do amazing things in her own right and in her own career. And so I have a couple of books. I don't have them with me, but she has, they have stickers and it says Nonviolence, Social Change book. And it's the Coretta Scott King Award. So if you can bring books like that into your classroom, that would be amazing. And so also as we talk about Women's History Month, similarly to when I talked about Black history, we don't always want to focus on singers and dancers and things like that. However, I absolutely think it's important to share stories about Misty Copeland, who was the first African-American woman to be a principal ballerina in the American Ballet Theater. I think it's important for us to show multiple views of African-American little girls who the children can see and know that they could one day be them. I have this story of Venus and Serena Williams, game changers. Again, it's okay to talk about athletes, and their story is so important. And so we want to talk about athletes and activism. We want to talk about where they grew up and how through their family support, they were able to become amazing, not just athletes, but businesswomen and entrepreneurs and philanthropists. We want to make sure that we give the story of multiple lenses of who we teach our children about. And so please continue to make sure that you have nonfiction books. Here's another one, Little Leaders, Bold Women in Black History. Now this is basically an anthology of short stories of women, Mae Jemison, Harriet Tubman, women who are still alive today and some who have passed, but it's important to share multiple stories and different perspectives, different times throughout history that show that women are game changers. The other thing that I think is very important to highlight, and this is part of the work I think for teachers, is that there's a narrative that's sometimes told about who Black women and Black girls are. There is a narrative that's not very positive. And so Women's History Month, Black History Month, we know we call it a month, but as educators, it's really our duty, in my opinion, to make sure that we share multiple stories more than just a month, but throughout the year that shares and uplifts and shows the beauty of little Black girls, right? And so this story, I Am Enough, is an amazing story that talks about friendship, that talks about how you might not always agree with your friends, but you still try to lift them up and to be positive. And so it's really important that we have stories, both nonfiction and fiction, that are just in our classrooms, that the children, it does not matter if you have all African American students or just one. We need to make sure that we change the narrative of who little Black girls and women, who we are, because we know that there is a narrative that does not put us in a positive light. And so as educators, and again as parents, a friend of mine gave me this book she's not African American, but she said it was a wonderful book and she wanted me to share it with my daughter. And so try to think of what you have in your home and what you have in your classroom and try to make sure that there is a positive reflection of both nonfiction and fiction books that share multiple lenses, multiple stories. And so having stories that show little girls with their families interacting in a beautiful, joyous way is one of the ways that we can highlight who and what we are. Chapter books that show little black girls in their light, doing just things that they do to provide and have joy is important. Having everyday stories represented in our classroom that shows either a window or a mirror. And a window means that maybe the people in your classroom are looking through and they've never experienced going to the hairdresser and getting their hair done, braided. Or maybe it's a mirror where they look and they say, wow, this person looks like me. Or wow, I remember sitting in a seat and feeling this way. If we want to be real social justice leaders and we want to promote anti-racism in our classroom, in our homes, we have to do it, in my opinion, one easy way to do it is through picture books. I have this book also, Glory, an amazing book that shares stories and information from little girls and people from around the world. Beautiful book with beautiful pictures, photographs, that makes just the story important and highlights just beautiful, beautiful images of beautiful girls. Another book that I have in my classroom, Black Girls Rock, Owning Our Magic, Rocking Our Truth. A book of trendsetters, a book of innovators, a book of activists and philanthropists and women who have made changes in the world in multiple ways. And so I think it's important as we teach about Women's History Month that we try to still be mindful and conscious of the fact that there are certain stories being told that as teachers, educators, parents, we need to interrupt certain stories that are told and make sure that we are promoting those things that show kindness, that show empathy, that show strength, that show love, that show intellect and intelligence, and it really just changes the narrative of what some people might view our girls to be. And so these are also some flashcards that I use with my own children. I plan to bring these into the classroom. As I in this video, I want you to please continue to give feedback, provide comments, ask questions. If there are certain books that you want to know more about and certain resources, please ask, hit the notification bell so that you'll know when I promote or I shoot a new YouTube video, and continue to please just add more literacy, add different genres into your classrooms, into your homes. We are virtual now in many areas. I know a lot of people aren't sure what to use and what to say. Please feel free to also email me with any questions, comments, or concerns. And I hope you enjoyed this video. And that's it. eTeachers 365, where education and culture meet.